All right, hello class. So today we are officially switching gears into our identity unit of the course. And so with that, we're going to lead off by going back to the Bossier book, Cactus Country, and specifically the essay titled Dispatches from it. So in this one, I want to start with something from the very first page of this particular reading. So it starts off with this question: what do you want to do with yourself, Zoe? And then it goes on later to raise this question, or this point rather. Adults seem to ask me versions of this question. Who did I want to become all the time? And so I wanted to start right there. Just so in a unit about identity, I think it's worth just kind of pausing to think about the bigger questions of what even is identity? What sense do we make of it? And what's the point of someone asking you, what do you want to become? Or similar questions like, who do you want to be when you grow up? Or what job do you envision for yourself? I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing or a harmful thing, but I do think it's an interesting kind of very specific choice that people tend to go in that direction. So what do we make of that? Have you been asked that question? How do you tend to respond to that question or react to that question? I think it's all just kind of interesting food for thought. Carrying on here on 172, in the second full paragraph here, it reads, let's see, actually we're going to start kind of midway through that paragraph. So it reads, I picked up on the casual misogyny men espoused around the picnic table, admonishing us boys not to throw, fight, or cry like girls. I still struggle to understand how anyone could take pride in a gender so often perceived as less strong, courageous, intelligent, and capable than another, even when it wasn't true. And connected to that, I actually wanted to jump to 174 here in this middle paragraph. Actually, I'm just going to read this whole paragraph on 174. This is the big one that occupies most of the page. My co-teachers also taught me to appreciate femininity in ways I'd never experienced before. Everyone on staff was female, and the gentle energy at Second Street couldn't have been more different from the rough shows of masculinity I'd grown up with in Cactus Country. During our monthly team meetings, we sat together in a circle on the floor, sharing a meal from a tray of assorted cheeses, fruit, and wine. Our director, a fiercely ambitious woman named Jenny Douglas, would tap a resounding gong to begin the meeting, where we practiced deep breathing exercises and yoga poses and selected fortune cards to ruminate over before discussing the month's announcements, initiatives, curricula, and concerns. When these conversations became emotional, warmth and support were freely given, a sympathetic smile, the light touch of a hand. More than once, one of the teachers would break into unexpected tears, and I would find myself crying with them. The nuances of good caregiving, to care and accept care in return, were still new to me, but I wanted to learn, and this was enough for the women to accept me into their fold, to call me their co-teacher. So I wanted to pair those two excerpts from page 172 and 174, just because I think it's pretty interesting when we see kind of Bossier's perception of gender here. First, sort of minimizing, rejecting, sort of thinking in a derogatory way about being a woman, about femininity, and then obviously her perception having changed by the time we get to 174. And I'm just curious of, where these perceptions come from, if these are things that you yourself have experienced, what your own kind of views on all of these issues are. So I also want to do a short little quote from 173, just where Bossier writes, caretaking was the most challenging job I ever had. And I'm just curious of why would this be, and how does that kind of concept fit in with the broader scheme of being an educator? Bearing in mind she's working at the preschool level here, which is quite different from other realms of education we talked about in our previous unit. But I think that just is worth kind of looking back to education briefly for that purpose. Otherwise, though, let's see. Let me go to 175. So this is the last sentence of the first full paragraph here. Am I looking in the right place here? Let's see. Well, I'm not seeing what I was looking for, so maybe I'll skip over this particular part, but well, just to address the bigger idea. Bossier gets at this idea of never having considered the possibility of what this outcome would be, and sort of I'm just curious about kind of our reactions to that moment there. Sorry, I have trouble placing that exact quote in my copy of the book as I'm recording here. Okay, carrying forward though, let's go ahead and jump ahead to a part I've got for sure here. This is on 176. So Bossier writes, this is towards the bottom of the page, last full paragraph that we have. Few of my friends, whether at City High or in Cactus Country, plan to attend even community college next year, let alone a school prestigious enough to call itself a university. They wrote off higher education as too expensive, a waste of time and money, when you could be out working. We all knew the teachers and guidance counselors who persuaded us to apply were full of shit. College couldn't prepare you for real life in a place like Tucson. I'd visited UA's campus once or twice on school field trips and had joined my friends in making fun of the students kicking hacky sacks back and forth on the mall and running into one another in the rush to their next class. They seemed to belong to a different world than us. One more like the Rita Ranch kids of my childhood, the Rita Ranch kids of my childhood had inhabited. So I'm just curious on this part of this perception of college, the way that Bossier is depicting it here, her preconceptions before she actually matriculates and attends. Does it seem sort of familiar to folks? Where do these kind of stereotypes come from? Have we heard this before? Does this match your own perceptions maybe of what college would be, or maybe even now what you perceive it to be? I find sometimes those perceptions change when someone actually is a student at a college, though maybe not. I think some of the underlying sensibilities certainly could stick with someone. So in any event, what we sort of think in response to that. Carrying forward here though, let's see, I'm going to go to page 178, this middle paragraph here that starts, I'm sorry. So I'm sorry, she said. I hope we can start over. I brushed it off, said it was okay. I learned a few things about reconnecting with people from living in Cactus Country, where friends came and went with the seasons. Certain friendships, even after lying dormant for a year or two, seemed to pick up right where they left off. Other times, a different way of relating to each other would emerge from the remnants of the old, like new growth budding from a felled cactus stalk. Just as I was no longer the boy Sage had known in middle school, she had grown into a woman who was almost nothing like the girl I remembered. So for this section here, I'm just curious about kind of what we think of this reunion between these two people, the different kinds of friendships described, the changes. Why is it like that? What does that kind of capture in this interaction here? And so then I think the last part of the text I'm fully going to go to. Actually, maybe there's two other places I'm going to go to. First is on 186. This is the first two paragraphs here. So it just reads, how did you get here, I said. I mean, how did you become a writing professor? I learned to teach in grad school, he said, running two fingers over a new mustache. I got my MFA, and then I published my first book and applied for teaching jobs. I considered this, training my eyes on the doll heads lining his desk. And I bring this up less to raise a question or anything kind of profound, but just this is actually really, really close to my personal experience and how I came to kind of be a professor of writing in English and literature. And so I think it's kind of interesting, and in part just I think if you're anything like me, when I was an undergraduate and looking at professors, there was kind of that question, and not say it was like so profound I was looking up to them as these people I aspired to, but more so just how do you even end up there? And sometimes it is as simple as something like this when someone wasn't necessarily even intending on a career in education. I know personally I wasn't necessarily planning on that, but that's kind of the way things plan out, and graduate school being sort of a conduit to that kind of career. So just kind of offer that up. The last thing I wanted to go to here though is on page 182. This last full sentence of the page. So it reads, the longer I stayed in school, the harder it became to relate to my high school friends, some of whom I suspected might be quietly resentful of my scholarship. And I'm just curious if this is relatable for folks, why or why not? And all the more so, why would this be the dynamic? Why would this take shape for Bossier the way that it does? Why this disconnect? So in any event, that's a whole bunch of small parts from the text, a whole bunch of questions. So feel free to grapple with any given one of those in our discussion. As always, please feel free to bring in other ideas as well. We're launching into this identity unit, so I encourage you to consider this part of the text primarily through that lens. I think this book on the whole probably lends itself better to identity than anything else. But in any event, feel free to shoot off in some other directions as well, and we'll see where the discussion goes. But thank you all for watching.